Hey Beacon, welcome home to your Bounce Back Blueprint Community podcast, where you are challenged to be, do, and have God's best as you thrive on your journey from setback to success. I'm your Bounce Back guide, Tiffany Huff Struthers, and I'll be guiding you on the journey by sharing tips, tools, and the tea on how I was able to bounce back from escaping death, healing from heartbreak, and finding hope in homelessness. And then I wrote an award-winning book all about it. And shout out to God, ever since I was courageous enough to share my story, my life and the lives of women around the world have been forever changed. And as a member of the Bounce Back Blueprint community, I'm called to teach you to do the same. So grab your journal and let's build this blueprint. Hey Beacon, before we start building the blueprint this week, I have a question for you. Has 2020 knocked you down so hard you aren't sure how to get back up? Do you wake up and look in the mirror in the morning and wonder, who is she? Do you feel like you've been doing all the things and frankly, none of the things are working? Listen, I get it. I've been there. I've been knocked down really hard several times, and the shame and guilt felt like it was going to be impossible to overcome. I'm talking about bankruptcy, domestic violence, being shot, homelessness, you name it. I've probably experienced it. What I know for sure, though, is that we don't grow alone. And so I want you to know that if you need some support, if you're looking for guidance, if you want a bounce back guide to help you develop your plan of action and hold you accountable as you grow through this season, I am her. And right now I'm offering a special on one-on-one coaching. As long as you book and pay for your sessions by December 31st, you will get your sessions at $97 each. In fact, I have the Manifest in a Month program that is for 1 month, 5 sessions at $497. You can do one-on-one individual sessions at $97 each. And I also have a 90-day program as well. So if you're interested, or if you want to have a quick chat about how I can help you and what coaching really looks like for you, then grab the link in my show notes and schedule your breakthrough session. It is free. There are no obligations. If it's not for you, that's fine. But give yourself permission to explore the opportunities necessary to make sure that you are living and being and doing and having all that God will call you to in 2020 and, of course, in the new year. Now, I'm excited to share that we have our final guest of the year in this week's episode, and she is my Aussie sister, Elyse Rooney. Let me tell you a little bit about Elyse before we bring her on. Elyse is passionate about empowering women to simplify their lives and homes so they can walk in faith and be present for their families. She started her podcast, the Wholesome Mumma and brand, as a platform and community for overwhelmed and exhausted mothers to find joy and encouragement and start to thrive and enjoy their lives. She lives in Australia with her husband, 2 and soon to be 3 children. And she is also going to be launching the Free as a Mama course very soon. It is my pleasure to introduce you to Elyse Rooney. Elyse Rooney here with us today. You've already heard her professional bio, but you ladies know that I believe we do the best at introducing ourselves. So Elyse, welcome to the podcast, and please share with the community who you are beyond the bio.
Thank you, Tiffany. I'm so excited to be here with you and sharing a little bit more of my story. So, as you heard, I'm from Australia in a beautiful town called Newcastle. We live on the beach. I love the beach. I am going to go to the beach probably after this recording, and because we're just going into summer here. I have 2 beautiful children, and I'm currently pregnant with my 3rd. So it's been a bit of a fun time with 2 toddlers and going through pregnancy. But yeah, this year, through what was meant to be a hard, horrible year, I kind of decided I'm going to flip and start a business and a brand through it. So that's when I created the Wholesome Mumma.
Wow, you're brave. Two toddlers and another on the way. Yes, yes, you are brave to say the very least. And yes, you have the podcast now, the Wholesome Mama, and I know that you are going to soon be releasing the Free as a Mama course. So that's all exciting. Can you talk a little bit about your journey to getting to this place? Like, how did you decide to, or what made you decide to start the podcast and create the course?
Yeah, so really it started, I guess, after my first son was born. I We came home and I looked at my husband and said, "What do we do now? They let us leave with this child, and now we've got to raise it." And I felt very overwhelmed. And through a series of just life happening, I really struggled with breastfeeding, and I just wasn't really enjoying motherhood like I thought you were supposed to. Like the
Mhm.
movies show you, and all the, you hear all these lovely things about bonding straight away with your baby and all those nice things. And I didn't like our home. I just didn't know what purpose there was, or if there was purpose beyond being a mother. So through that, I kind of went down the road of simplifying our home and moving to a more intentional way of living. And that was really great. And then we had our daughter, so we had them very close together.
How far
Uh,
apart are your kids?
they are 4 days off being 15 months, so they're 14 months apart.
Okay, yeah, you're really brave. So mine are 19 months apart, which was challenging, but
Yeah.
that 5 months would make a huge difference.
Yeah, so we struggled for a while to fall with our son, and we thought it would be the same with our daughter and this one, but God has other plans.
He always does.
And then our daughter came early, so that even shortened the gap that little bit more.
Wow.
So and then after, really to continue the story, after she was born, she was fine. We came home. She didn't need any time in NICU or anything. And then a few weeks later, she got really, really unwell and ended up back in hospital, ended up sedated on breathing machines and in ICU for a week. And it was probably a month after that whole experience finished, where we were discharged and came home from the hospital. And I just, all of a sudden, it dawned on me, we were hours, if not an hour, away from losing her. So walking into the emergency room with a little size newborn, because she was a newborn size, like a full
Right.
term newborn size then. And the nurse looked at us and said, "You need to come with us right now." And within 2 minutes of us walking through the door, she was on machines and pretty much just got taken off us to do that. So that was a really, I think through that time, I was on adrenaline, just getting through survival mode. And it wasn't until we came home that, yeah, it dawned on me, wow, we were really close to losing her.
Right.
So then through that, I had a lot of, I had PTSD and postnatal depression through that, which we can go into a bit later. But I had to do a lot of mindset work. I had to do a lot of healing from not blaming myself for that. Because, as women and mothers, we have a chronic problem of the shoulda, coulda, wouldas and
Yes.
all the what ifs.
And especially as a new mom, right? I mean, you had two children, but you were a new mom of two children. So being a new mom of one child is already overwhelming. Even if you read all the books and watch all the shows, it's like, well, what if it doesn't fit into these check boxes? What does that mean? So I'm sure that having that experience with her so early and having, like I said, two small children was very traumatic. So how did the PTSD manifest itself?
So I really just the day that I realized I wasn't okay, I knew that I was kind of down, but I thought, well, yeah, my baby's just been sick. I've got two young children. Because at the time, my son was 15 months old. So, like, full credit to him, he handled that season like a boss of a dude. Because he was really still a little baby himself, the poor thing. But when I realized that I wasn't okay, was we came home from the beach and I thought to myself, I'm just going to go and put the kids in their cots and then I'll call my husband to say, yeah, you need to come home and then I'll just go. And I didn't know where I was going, how far, like I didn't have a plan of like going away forever
Yeah,
but I
right.
was just like, I just need to go. I just need to run away for like a minute. And so, by the grace of God, I was able to pull myself kind of out of my body almost. I don't know how to explain it and realize you're not okay. You need help right now, like
Mm.
right now. So, I called my doctor, who so beautifully helped me, talked me through going in the car, going to see her, which, then started that process of what healing looked like.
And so, how old is your daughter now?
She'll be 2 next month.
So, how long would you say that process from that moment when you made those calls to your husband at work and to your doctor? What's the journey been like since? That's a short
So,
period of time to have overcome that and started an amazing business.
yeah. Um, so that was probably, she was unwell in March, so probably April. And then I ended up going on medication and seeing a psychologist every week for 3 months and then every 2 weeks for a few months after that. But the actual moment where I was healed was at church, back when we could go to church. I don't remember the message. I don't remember who even spoke the message, what it was about. But and I don't even remember why they said come forward if you need prayer. Like, but I just, as you do sometimes, just find yourself down there, go, what do I need prayer for? I don't know, but I'm here. Here I
Right.
am. Look, I
And the
always
fear
need prayer.
moves.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, and then I felt that whisper in my soul say, don't you trust me? And I was like, well, yeah, God, like I'm a Christian. So yeah, I trust you. He went, no, but don't you trust me? And, yeah, I trust you. I know I should trust you. He goes, yeah, I know you know you should trust me,
But do
but do
you?
you? I went, no, I don't. I don't. I'm trying to do it all on my own because I don't know why, but no. And he just, in the gracious way that he does, says, well, can you? Because I got it. And so in that moment, I said, yeah, okay, all right,
Just surrendered.
surrendered, and instant healing. Like I've never known before. And I went home and I said to my husband, I think I don't have it anymore. He was like, okay, let's just like,
He's like, all right, well,
what do you mean? Like, have you really lost the plot or what? And then the next morning he like said, like, how do you feel? I said, I feel fine. Like I feel clear. Like it's just the fog, the weight, the darkness is just gone. I feel fine.
praise the Lord. Like that was
Yeah.
wow. Talk about Godspeed, right?
Yeah. So I know he'll move in a moment when he wants to.
So I know before you were saying that you had a moment of realization where you felt like things just didn't feel good. You weren't being intentional. Was that before or after your daughter?
So that was before.
So then once you had that realization, then you had your daughter and she got sick and you were in this whirlwind. So after you had that moment of healing, which I don't want to take anything away from the experience that you had prior to that, because PTSD is very challenging and it takes work. And I'm so happy to hear by the grace of God that you did have that miraculous healing. But how did you then get back to rebuilding that space in your home for intentional motherhood and all of the other things that God had for you to be and do?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, through seeing the psychologist, she really helped me with a lot of mindset and practical things like mindfulness and gratitude, and was explaining how gratitude actually changes the pathways in our brain. And so, I implemented a lot of those kind of practices, which definitely helped. And then when things just started to get clear again, I was just able to remember the mum that I wanted to be and the life that I wanted to create for our family and the home that I wanted to create with our kids. And so from there, I was able to then kind of like it just remembered going, oh,
Mm.
actually, hang on. No, we do we do need to just simplify and be so much more intentional about the time that we have together. And I think that going through that experience, well, I know that going through that experience brought to the forefront the importance for us for living more intentionally, particularly
Right.
when it comes to the time that we have our kids and how we want them to be and how we want to raise them in this world.
Yes, yes. Absolutely not the same by any stretch of the imagination, but I can definitely relate to that. Of course, my children are a lot older than yours, but my son very recently had an accident and his car flipped over and he and his friends walked away without a scratch. And so it is those pivotal moments when it's like this could have been the end, when you realize and you get recentered even in the midst of whatever other chaos that you have to deal with. But even when you have that kind of realization, you still do have to have some thought process or some guidance around, okay, this is where I know I want us to go from here. Where do I start? So, where did you start?
Yeah, so I really started with listening to podcasts and reading some books. There's a book that I love called Present Over Perfect by Shauna
Heard this
Nyquist.
before, but I've not read it.
It's a lovely book. And I think that I read that back when I first was starting, after my son was born, when I wanted to be a present mum. I always said that I want to be present for my kids. I want, if anything, I want my kids to look back on me and remember that was present. Mum was there. So yeah, that was how I started. And then really after my daughter, when I regrouped and recentered, I then was realizing that in motherhood, there's such a culture, and from what I've heard, it's similar over in the US as well, where either life has to be Instagram perfect or you have to be a hot mess express.
No in between, right?
There can't be balance. And so I've found myself trying to do this balance, but I couldn't find anyone else really talking about it. And so I just started sharing things on my social media and was getting a lot of good feedback of women and mothers saying, thank you so much for speaking about this, because, yeah, I don't want to do like coffee and wine just to survive and all that sort of stuff.
Right.
And so when I was younger, um, someone spoke over me that that I would have a platform. And I always just thought, well, it'll be the platform in the church, like I'll preach. Okay. And that just kind of, I don't know if it will ever come to pass in that way. But when I was praying earlier this year about, God, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing? Because I'm trying to do things, and I just, what purpose? There's something was starting to really churn inside me that I needed to do something. And then so as I was sharing things on social media, and he said, well, are you using the platform that is available to you? And then I just thought, maybe I should start a podcast then, because maybe this needs to get out to more women. And then I kind of just started it for a bit of a lull and see how it went. And then it kind of just took off, and so many women have messaged me saying, thank you so much for bringing this conversation to light about, there being such a broad spectrum of motherhood, but yeah, we can actually enjoy it again.
You've said so many things that I want to touch on that are important. The first is that you don't have to conform, right? I know we hear that scripture all of the time, like, be transformed, don't conform to the world. But you're right. You don't have to operate in those extremes. Either you're a hot mess, or you have to have, wine and coffee to cope, or you're like hustling until you die, right? And I think that sometimes, even though we know something like that to be true, we keep quiet about it. So I want to commend you for even stepping out and saying, I need to share this because other people need to be affirmed and know that it's okay. Because that can
Yeah,
be
thank
scary,
you.
right? When you kind of go against the grain, you don't really know what's going to happen. But I also believe that God brought you through that journey for the intention so that you were able to do that, right? So I wanted to touch on that. And then the other thing that you said that I wanted to touch on was you used what was available to you, right? A lot of times, I think, even when we do get an idea, when we know God is calling us to use our experience to impact other people, it's like, oh, but I need to have all of the things, and it needs to be shiny, it needs to be big. But social media is free. And whether or not you did, you could potentially start a podcast for free or very low cost. So, I want whoever is listening to know that even if you're like Elyse and someone spoke over to you, that you would have a platform, know that the church is you. So wherever you are, that's your pulpit, right? How are you using it to impact other people? So how has I like to think that there is what I call boomerang effect, when you put something good out and it comes back to you because you're impacting other people, right? Some people call it blessed to be a blessing. So how has having the podcast impacted you and your family? How has it changed you?
I think, well, I'm a lot more of a confident person.
Mm,
I like a podcast because I can sit here in my pajamas and record it.
yeah.
But I'm a lot more, and I'm getting a lot more confident in talking about some of the topics of motherhood that no one wants to talk about, or that people are maybe a bit too scared to bring up or talk about. But really, for me, the biggest thing has been hearing the stories about how my words that, I pray over my podcast episodes that they would go out and bring light and life to people, and hearing the words of people who, want have decided that, they will keep trying with the kids, or have decided that they want to get closer to God. Like, if nothing else, and I'm helping people, women, be better mothers, be better wives, and want to be closer to God, then that's enough for me.
I mean, and that's a lot. I
Yeah.
think it's
Yeah.
little things that have the greatest impact that we take for granted, and I know for myself, with having this podcast and also having listened to yours that we plant seeds that have the potential to have generational impact. I mean, think about it. If you are impacting a mom, that means you're impacting her children and potentially her children's children, right? So I feel strongly, like you said, about the power in sharing our stories and experiences because they literally change lives and ultimately change the world. So I'm curious, what would you say to the mama right now who does feel like she's a hot mess express and doesn't know where to begin to even try to share her challenges or her experiences, not only so that she can grow, but so that someone else doesn't feel alone?
Yeah, so I would say to her that you are definitely not alone and you are definitely not stuck. I think the hardest thing with feeling like, especially that mindset of being a hot mess, uh, so often comes with the feeling of being stuck, that this is how motherhood just is. And so, one really practical way that I guess is a good way to start is to just start to be more grateful. Just be grateful about and be specific, but be grateful about things that are happening in your day. So rather than, and it starts to shift your mind. So rather than focusing on all the little things that are overwhelming, you're starting to focus on all the little things that are bringing you joy throughout the day. Because what we focus on expands, right? So if we are focusing on the things that are making us feel frustrated, feel overwhelmed, feel stressed, then we're just amplifying that feeling in our brain. And then we're just going to focus more on all the things that are making us feel that way. Whereas if we start to focus on and just like write it down on your phone, on your notes app, or a post-it note somewhere, you can get a fancy journal if you really want, but just make something really practical and tangible for you to stop and go, I really loved just playing with my kids right then because they did this. Or I really loved spending time with my husband tonight because he made me laugh when he said this. And being specific and focusing on that. And soon you will realize, and this is one thing that the psychologist taught me, was it only takes like 3 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes a day of doing this. And over the course of a month, you have literally created new pathways in your brain
Wow.
that actually prove to you that when things do happen, you have such a more positive outlook on it. So say you, I don't know, drive into the fence or something, instead of instead of being like, oh man, now I've got to fix the car and fix the fence. That's going to cost me thousands of dollars, rah, 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 rah. And going down that frazzled, stressed mindset, if you do that, because things do happen, especially in motherhood, chaos is and mess is unavoidable.
Right.
But you're
You're
more able, yeah, you are coming from a place of responding, not reacting. And your response to something like maybe driving into the fence will be, oh, thank goodness no one was hurt, or it wasn't like, didn't drive into another car or something like that.
right, right. I think you're right. And I think all of those examples that you gave are great. I love a beautiful journal myself, and I am a post-it freak. I also use index cards sometime and tack them to a cork board as reminders. One thing that I've also started to do is send myself an email. And if you have Gmail, you can schedule it for a later date. So I will send myself an email about something that happened or a good thing, and then schedule it and forget about it. And then I get this email, and it's a reminder on a random day of something awesome or a memory. Um, that was great that I want to cherish. And so it's like, those little ta-das and moments of gratitude that you can have for yourself in your quiet time and space. But those are great ideas as well.
Yeah, I love that. I love the idea of sending an email to yourself, especially on a later date where you may have forgotten, or you just don't know when that email is going to come to you and you're going to read it and need to read that. That's so good.
Yeah, so if you have Gmail, I highly recommend you do it. And it's also kind of off topic, but it's also something that I try and do like at the end of the year. And like when I'm reflecting and setting goals, and then send it to myself like towards the end of the next year to see if I align with who I think my future self will be in a year. So that's another way, to remind yourself of the little things. Because so often, if we're moving so fast, it's hard to take those moments. But we have to be, like you said, intentional about creating those moments. Do you have any other tips that you would share about being intentional? And because I think we hear it so much, right? Like you have to be intentional, you need to be intentional. But for somebody who recognizes the need but doesn't have a model, what other steps might one take to be intentional about creating a space in the life and the motherhood journey that she wants to have?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, the first thing that I would say is to be intentional, you need to know your values and your priorities and what you want to be intentional around. Because if you don't have boundaries around that, then you can do all the lovely planning, but when it comes to it, nothing's going to change. So, knowing what you value and what the areas are that you want to be intentional around would be first. And then one really good way is I like to think of um, being stressed and overwhelmed and all those things like a Coke bottle, where every time something happens, you shake it up and then eventually it's going to explode.
Yes.
So, my thing is that I like to help women to just dissolve those little shakes so that things don't explode.
Hmm.
So really, another really easy, practical thing to do is to do a big brain dump. So of a night time, you can do one just to get everything out of your head onto paper, particularly if you are a woman who goes to bed and can't sleep because your thoughts are racing. If you just write it out on paper, it's so good, because then it's there, it's there, and you can go to sleep.
Yes.
But the another way that I like to use a good brain dump is when I just feel like I'm too bogged down in overwhelm. I'll just do a brain dump of all the things that I can think of that are overwhelming me. And some of them are like little good. So yeah, brain dumping